Right, guys, welcome to episode 4 of your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host. I'm just going to share this to a few places so I can get a few more people on. So please bear with me. Standard scenario, I'll let you know in the comments where to jump to. Scandal. Of your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host. I'm just going to share. Just give me 2 minutes. Right, that's that shared. All right, just give me 2 minutes. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll be there in a moment. And last one, and then we'll begin. I'll start the recording. Right, there we go. So let's get the podcast recording. Hi, and welcome to your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host, the Wealth Dragon Coach and CEO of the KML Group and Home Hug Limited. Today's episode is how to ensure you don't leave the military with no income and no prospects and no life, because there's a real big danger. So this is primarily aimed at those guys who are still in, and to try and persuade you to stop being bloody mongs, get in a car and finance when you come back from a tour, and then you leave the army with no skills, no money, no prospects, and then you lose all the support network that you have and you just crumble. Where in reality, if you're in the military, you should leave so comfortable, even if you only do 4 to 10 years, because all our income is disposable. And the big problems that I see is that you get, because we're pretty much from the dregs of society, let's be honest. I was a bit of a real stupid ass when I joined, and had very little prospects. But because of the military pays you really well, I had no idea how to manage the money that we get. So I was getting all these funds coming into my bank account each week, and I was wasting them until I had a conversation with somebody who really laid it down for me. And that's where sort of my wealth journey began. And it was basically stop spending your money, start saving. You're only here for a short period of time. The army career is a very, very short period of your life, and you've got to think long-term instead of short-term and delayed gratification. And so I went from spending my money to saving half of my wages, which is 400 quid, because we were only getting paid 800 quid when back in the day. And unfortunately, I stopped doing that. I only did that for like a year or so, and then I wasted it, and I spent very frivolously. Like, for example, my wages went from £800 to £3,500, and it was all disposable. Think of what other things I could do with that money, say 10 years ago. I could have really built up a strong portfolio, but instead I wasted it. And so many guys were wasting their money as well. That's like the whole culture of the army is to have a pop stars weekend, spend all your money, and then you end up with nothing, and then you're pretty much a pauper because you get fed, you get watered, you have your food, your heating, so you don't really need to worry about anything. So you would spend all your money immediately, and then within a few days of being paid, there'd be nothing left, and you'd be scraping the barrel together for the rest of the month. But if you're in the army now, what you need to do is at least save half. It's not going to be difficult for you to do that because even on a private's wages, you're on about 1,100, unless you've got a family. If you're a single living in, you should be saving at least half. And what you need to do is get not even a big deposit, because we have something called Help to Buy. And what that means is it will give you half your wages as a deposit. And I know somebody who was a corporal who's bought a house in Wolverhampton, now rents it out. And the only money that came from his pocket was 750 quid. So he's got a house now that pays him about 60, 70 pounds per calendar month because of how he bought it. And he only paid £750 out of his own pocket because of the incentives that we have. So you need to make use of the Forces Help to Buy as soon as possible. And there's a real lovely caveat when you join the military. It's where society has to look after you because you're looking after society. And one of those caveats is the mortgage company can't tell you, no, you can't rent out your house if you put it on a resi mortgage. Why is that important for those of you who are complete mongs and just want to spend all your money? That means you only have to put a 10% deposit down on a property, of which the army will give you half your yearly wage towards. And if you buy a new build and you get the government Help to Buy, it'll be 75% of the purchase price. So not only do you have to not put 10% down, you also then get 75% equity for free because the bank will leverage that and the government will give you the deposit. So that means all you're going to need to pay for is your solicitor's fees. So even if you're unable to save your own money, if you can't trust yourself, get yourself a house that will rent in a fairly good, decent-sized town. If you're unsure where to go, give me a call. I'll help you out because Birmingham is always going to rent, and I'll tell you which areas to avoid. And if you're on a private wages, the chances are you can get 10%, which is about 3-4 times. So you could probably get a flat in a medium area for about 60k, 70k. And it doesn't need to end there because then you're on the property ladder then, and then you can slowly upgrade throughout your career. And by the end of it, really, if you're wanting to build wealth, you could have a paid off house. It'd be so easy for you to do that. Instead of saving, you whack £400 off your mortgage each month. And just keep that. And then with every promotion, every yearly pay rise, you maybe just increase what you pay off your house as well as you're renting it out because you want to be single living in and have your home rented out. And then there's no reason why you can't pay it off within half the time. Say if you've got you've got a person paying your mortgage 500 quid for a 60k flat, and then you're paying £400 overpayment each year. So what do you do at year 10 when you've paid off your flat and now suddenly your income increases by £500? Go and do it again, or sell that flat, go to a bigger house where you'll get a higher yield, and rinse and repeat. And let's be honest, guys, if we're in the military, an average, say for a sergeant, you're earning you're taking home about £2,000 a month. You can easily save 500 quid, easily. And you're not saving it, you're putting it into a mortgage. And it'll cost you nothing. It'll cost you half a month's wages to acquire a property. There are companies out there that will help you acquire a property, and then you can rent it because your lender has to give you consent to let. They can't say no. You'll pay a little bit more interest, and you might pay interest on the Forces Help to Buy, but it's minuscule in comparison to the long-term wealth you're going to get when you have a property. Because property is just so inflation beating. It beats inflation every step of the way. So you want to be spending that money and putting it into property wherever you can. And if you're going to do a full career, like 22, 24 years, you could leave with fully unencumbered properties. When I say unencumbered, I mean no mortgages on them, and them all rented out. You could leave with 2 or 3 of them. As well as your pension, your lifestyle doesn't have to change. The only thing that will change will be the amount of hours that you work, because you'll be working a lot less. And if this is going to be your plan, you need to make sure that you do it right from the beginning, because you only really want to have one property in your personal name because of the tax ramifications, and then the rest you want to put in a company. So how we would get around that is maybe selling the one in your personal name after it's unencumbered, and then moving the money into a company to purchase 3 or 4 of them. Because if you've got an unencumbered property that you buy for £60,000, you pay it off in 10 years, chances are it'll be worth about 80 if it's in a half decent location. So now you've got £80,000 cash. The temptation obviously is to go and spunk it, buy a fast car, be a pop star for a month, and then be bloody giving out handjobs for a fiver for the next 10 years because you're stupid. But don't reinvest the money, because then with £20,000, there's no reason why you can't get 2, 3, 4 properties perhaps if you get good deals. And if you're getting £200-300 off each property, and then you really, really work at it, and they're in a company, and you try and get them unencumbered before you leave, there's no reason why your lifestyle will ever be affected, and you can have a really, really, really comfortable life in terms of what you want to do after the military, because your body's going to be broken if you're in the army. It's a very, very, very tough job in terms of how it affects your joints, your back, and your mental health as well. It's not easy leaving once you're institutionalized in the way to how the army works. So I'm going to give you a few steps. I want you to save. If you're single living in and you've joined 16, you don't know what you want to do, don't take examples from the people who have been in the army 22 years and don't even have a property. Because you're going to see them on BBC News in 5 years' time crying on the news because they've got no one to help them, and they're complaining that they've been abandoned when they've had this real great career of where they've got loads of money, loads of disposable income. You won't know what to do with it. And what will happen is you'll change your living expenses. You'll change how you used to live, because your family won't live as well as you do. And people who earn the same amount of money as you won't live as well as you, because it's all disposable. It's when you come out, it's only really then you realize how easy you had it, because you didn't have a gas, you didn't have electric, you didn't have council tax, you didn't have food shopping, you didn't have fuel, you didn't have just like gym membership. All of that gets included, and that is it's like £1,000 a month. You don't have to spend that because it's all taken care of when you join the military. So why not save that now, so you get used to not having it, because you're going to have to spend it when you're in the civvy street if you don't plan well, and put it into property. As soon as you can, get a property. And no matter if you're a Tom on, say, 18,000 or whatever much they're earning, or a sergeant and you're earning 36,000, you need to get on the property ladder now. And the best time to get on property was 10 years ago, and the second best time is now, because the general trend of it goes up. And if you're paying down the debt and somebody else is in that property paying down the debt for you as well, you can at least leave the military with one encumbered property, and that will make your life so much easier. And you don't necessarily need to be in an area where you're going to live. Just put it in an area where it's going to rent. And as I say, if you don't know Birmingham, I'll help you find a property, and I'll help you get it so it rents all the time as well. And then what you want to do is get that paid off as soon as possible. Like chuck every bit of tour money, put half of it in. Every commitment bonus, chuck half of it in. And then when it's unencumbered, perhaps either sell it because you don't really want to have property in your personal name because of the tax, and then put it into a company and buy multiple properties. And then what you're going to do there is either completely and totally work on paying down the debts of a few properties, or if you want to go for the long haul, and learn about how being in debt is not necessarily a bad thing. Because if you're, for example, if you've got £400,000 worth of property, you've put 25% down on each one, and they're each worth £100,000. So you've got 4 properties, each worth £100,000. And you've put 25k of your money from when you sold that first property that you worked really hard to get paid off. You've sold that, moved it into a company, bought 4 properties. You put 25k in each one, and only a little bit of it will be your money, because a lot of the rent will have been going towards the mortgage. But just keep investing. Then you've got basically £325,000 worth of debt. So that's £75,000 on each property, because £25,000 of it is your money. And what happens to money over time is that it loses its buying power. Inflation eats away at the purchasing power of that money. So £1 10 years ago could have bought a lot more than £1 today. And that's going to continue going on, because our whole economy is debt-based. So that if £1 10 years ago could buy more, what does that tell you about in 10 years' time? The pound is going to be able to buy even less. So being in debt is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you earn money off that debt. And I don't mean go out, get a bloody Subaru, or buy a tax-free car from Germany and then have it for like 2-3 months in the UK, sell it at a massive loss. That seems to be the stupid culture we have in the army. What I'm talking about is money and property. So you've got £25,000 of debt in this property and £75,000 of equity. You want to keep the debt to equity ratio relatively high because you want inflation to eat away at the debt. And like you need to get used to being in debt if you're going to be involved in property. You need to change your money thermostat. Excuse me. And what do I mean by this? Like, for when I was first purchasing a property, I was looking at 60, 70,000 pounds and I was sweating. I was like, how can I be in so much debt? And now I'm basically in £2 million worth of debt, and I want to get in more because I want to have assets that are leveraged by the bank. So we've got property that's about 2.6 million with about 1.8 million pounds worth of debt. But I want inflation to eat away at the purchasing power of the debt, whereas the property is going to go up with inflation. So the equity is going to get greater. So when you leave the military, say it takes you 10 years to pay down one property. You've got £80,000 or say £100,000 worth of equity. Sell that property, pay the tax. You then put that into 4 more properties, but in a company this time. Then you're doing a full career. Then what I want you to do is either make a choice. Are you going to try and pay those properties off and then just live off the residual income, keep the portfolio really lean but profitable? Or are you going to go big and create wealth for your family and future generations? Because that's what happens when you get this right. And that means I want you to save all the money that you get from the rent, keep adding your £500. So say you get £300 per calendar month profit from each one. So that's £1,200 plus your 500 quid, let's say 1,500 quid for ease. So every 18 months, you can buy another property then. So after year 10, every 18 months, you can buy another property. So if you've got 14 years left and every year and a half, you can buy another property, right? I'm not going to be able to do that math. Let's just say every 18 months, and then you can buy it at 16 months because your income has increased. And then you can buy it at 14 months because your income has increased, because each time you buy a property, your income goes up because you're renting it out. There's no reason why you can't leave the military with a portfolio with 25 properties, each paying you £350 per calendar month profit. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. And it's all about setting yourself up early. It's even if you're halfway through your career, it's still not too late. Even if in the last 6 years, it's still not too late. You can still purchase a property, use Forces Help to Buy, get it paid off as soon as possible. That's what I want you to do, because it's going to be in your personal name. And what I mean by a company and personal name, they're 2 different entities. You have you and your person and your company, and they're 2 different entities in terms of tax. And I didn't understand this until I got involved in property. So you need to use Forces Help to Buy, pay that off as soon as you can. Every tour money, get it off. Every commitment bonus, put it into the house. For half your wages, I want that in the house. If you're really, really serious about having a real sweet life, that still leaves you with a shit ton of money to have a good time with. Say you're a full screw, you get 1,800 quid, you're saving 500 quid, and you're not saving, you're putting it into your future. It still only leaves you with 1,300 quid, and that is an absolutely astronomical amount in Civvy Street to have as a disposable income. You can get a fast car, it's just stop wasting it on stuff you're not going to remember about, because I speak to so many people now who are in the reserves, who are ex-military, and you know the first thing they say to me when I tell them what I do? They go, I wish I did that. I wish I was smarter with my money. I wish I could. And that's the one enduring theme that I speak to in veterans when I tell them what I do. And because I didn't really come from a particularly special job, just a medic, there's plenty of us, and there'll be plenty more after me. But I was sensible about the money. It took me a long time to build it up. But once it sort of snowballs, it explodes. And now we're buying 2-3 properties a year, because that's how we've structured it. We did the first one. That took me quite a long time. That was in 2011. The second one was in 2015. The third one was in 2016. The fourth and fifth ones were in 2017. 18, I did another 3. And this year, we're going to do another 6. And that's because it snowballs. I'm reinvesting every single penny that I have into the business. And eventually, it will just bloom where I can take a really fat wage and still continue growing the company. And this all came from paying off that first property, selling that and putting the money into a company, and then saving all the money that the property generated to buy the next one. And that's how it happens. It doesn't really take ingenuity. It doesn't take genius. It doesn't take being this kind of real strong hustler. You can just buy at market value. You don't need to go into below market value or anything like that. Property is a long game. You don't get rich tomorrow by property. You get rich in like 10, 15 years if you do it right. And anyone who's in the army who wants to do a short-term career of about 6 years, try and get a property that's unencumbered. So then you have that barrier. You can live in it if you want, or you can rent it out and then you can get £500-600, because £500-600 in your bank account each month is a real great cushion that will prevent you from going completely awry when you leave. Or living in a property where you don't have a mortgage to pay, you can then take a much lower paid job and not have your standard of living compromised. Because it's a real problem for a lot of people that leave the military, and no one really talks about this until you begin to sign off and you go into resettlement. But it won't be everything is completely different, and it's a massive culture shock. Even like being responsible for what time you get up, you'd think that would be really easy if you've been in the military for 10-15 years. Like what happened is my body clock went completely awry, and I struggled to get it back under control. And now that I've got a dog, thankfully, it is back under control. I'm getting up on time and I have a much more regulated lifestyle. The friends that you speak to and the conversations that you have will be so different. Like I can't even fathom how different the conversations I have when I'm actually in a professional industry in comparison to the soldiers or the lads or girls that I used to speak to. And having the burden of not having enough money would probably be so stressful. And I'm in a really fortunate position that I fought ahead and I fought to the finish, and that I don't really have that problem anymore. But compounding all of these, I can understand why people end up on the streets, because it's such a big change. There's so much more responsibility. You haven't got all the support around you. So those of you who are concerned about this, you need to plan now. You can't just go for the whirlwind of having a military career and not really planning your exit. Because for me now, I think the whole army career should be a 22-year resettlement plan. You should plan your exit from the army, because the longer you're in there, the more institutionalized and the more set in the ways you get of the military. And you'll realize how you're like a square peg trying to fit in a round hole when you go to Civvy Street. So you might as well be comfortable at the end of it. There's no excuse. If you watch this video, there's no excuse for you to be wasting your money. It's such a simple plan that anyone can do it. And if you're interested in doing it, drop us a message and I'll help you do it. Whether you've got 4 years left, whether you've got 18 years left, or whether you've got 24 years left and you've just joined, you can prepare yourself to go into Civvy Street for a real comfortable life. Like, who wants to work when they leave? Really? You want to work because you want to, not because you have to. And there's no reason why you can't just go explore, go travel, or chill out with a family and experience everything that you couldn't experience when you're in the army, because you have to commit so much and give so much to the military. So why not at the end of it set yourself up to have an absolutely fucking amazing life? Because you can. There's no reason why you can't. The only reason that you won't do it is because you've chosen not to. So when you're on BBC free in 10 years' time after you've left on the streets with nothing, blaming the government and the system, not holding yourself responsible for your own actions, it just seems to be a reoccurring theme that I see. Like, no one will help me. You should have helped yourself. You get paid enough. We get paid enough. We get paid so well when we're in the military. Help yourself. Stop bloody blaming everyone else. Put your money into property. Put it into an investment vehicle that gives you a return. It doesn't need to be a high return, but because we get paid so well, we can invest so much more than the average person. So the only reason that you end up on the streets is because you choose to be, unless you're in some sort of like horrid situation where you don't have the mental capacity to do it, which sometimes happens in our line of work. And for those people, that's you have an obligation, because you know what it's like, to put yourself in a position where you can help those that can't help themselves, especially the guys who have PTSD. Like it changes their world in such dramatic ways. They can't tell night from day. And if you're of sound mind and you're listening to this, you have an obligation to put yourself in a position where you're comfortable, and then perhaps you could maybe do a house that's pro bono, or take someone in and do a HMO. And it's all about helping each other, because the charities just seem to not help anyone. And it only seems to be the guys that were in the military or Navy or Air Force that actually do concrete work. So for those of you who are still in, I want you to secure your future. And then you can start helping other people in a more meaningful way, and stop blaming other people for your situation. It's you are the reason why you have no money at the end of the month. It's not the army. It's not your bloody wage. It's not the fact that you're a private. It's you. And the sooner you realize that, and the sooner that you realize you have the power to change your outcome and how you leave the military, the sooner you're going to have an absolutely wicked life. And everyone is entitled to a wicked life, and it's really easy for us to do it. And so many people don't realize, who are in the military or Navy or Army, is because we have a real culture of spending all our money, living in our overdrafts, getting loans on top of the tour for 6 months. So then you've invested all that time in the military going on a tour. You've invested all that time in the training, saving up your funds to then have nothing at the end of it that will last you for a lifetime. When in reality, it doesn't take very long to set yourself up for life. 10 years. And what's 10 years in an 80-year life? It's nothing really. So why not put the work in now? Because you only have a small window where your body is able to work really hard and generate economic activity where your time will be a lot more valuable, and so you can get money for that time. Because the time of a 30-year-old in comparison to time of a 70-year-old, you're not going to get paid as much because you can't do much because your body's broken, tired, knackered at that age. So you need to invest and realize that after 50, really, you want to be not doing very much. You want to be chilling out. You want to be traveling. You want to be getting a big beer belly and forcing a woman to marry you so you can grow a big dirty tash like this, and then they can't escape you. and that's what I'm setting myself up for. I'm working really hard now so I can have a really, really sweet life later, and you guys can have it too. And it's so simple. So if you're interested in this, and you're specifically in the military, I can't talk on the Navy or Air Force, but I assume that you've got forces help to buy, because it'd be pretty harsh if the Army guys did and you didn't. Drop me a message and we can start you along this process. If you're interested in completely changing your wealth forecast for the future, subscribe to the podcast. We've got a couple of episodes now. They're all really great content. And if you feel that anyone else needs to hear this message, share the message, and we'll help as many people as we possibly can. Right, I'm Daniel Kennedy, KML CEO and Wealth Dragon Coach. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 4 of Wednesday Dose of Wealth Wisdom, how to ensure you don't leave the military with no income, no prospects, and no life. Take the challenge, guys, because no one's going to do it for you.